Good evening, gearheads, and welcome to your Sunday night with Speed City. This is Jon Massengale. I'm in the studio in West Austin, overlooking downtown Austin. And across from me is the man you might have heard on a two-wheel or four-wheel motorsports show, Jonathan Green. Mr. Green, how are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm unjet-lagged, thankfully.
It's only taken you, what, 2 weeks to get unjet-lagged from New Zealand?
Yeah, pretty brutal.
Well, I know you had a fantastic time down there. We're really glad to have you back here for a fully whole and Jonathan Green this week. And we got lots to talk about because we have Formula One with their major event, their F175 event.
Yep.
And by the way, Bob Varsha is going to be joining us shortly, and we'll get his take on all this. But the F175 event, I want to get you guys' take on this thing.
Yeah.
But mainly because it was very different. F1's never done anything like this, where all 10 teams and 20 cars and 20 drivers were there and revealing the liveries all at once. They've never done this before.
Yeah, it was a good idea. Let's put it that way. But honestly, an American show stage, as it were, because it was the same guy that put on the Vegas, theatrics, as it were. And, that side of it was very well done. In fact, if you saw, they had the same apparatus that they had at Vegas for the opening ceremonies and the bands playing, the big speakers. And they were parked right by our commentary booth, if you remember.
Yeah.
That side of it, fine. But quite honestly, it failed on trying to make Formula One interesting when you're really asking very basic questions. You're also not showing anything that is relevant because all you're showing is a livery. The host was good and funny and irreverent, although it was a little bit kind of like the Oscars where it was all a bit, it didn't work. There's a lot of things I could say. I think it's a great concept, and like we said last week, it's a great idea in an off season where other sports are now doing things like this. I think what would be more helpful would be to have more video days. In fact, Carlos Sainz suggested this. In other words, you'd have more video as part of the show because that's really what people want to see. Is the cars going around the track. They don't really want to hear from the drivers. I prefer to see a panel situation whereby they're all talking to each other and we have more interaction between them.
That's an interesting take. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, go open a question up, swearing. Okay, but have Max there, but don't make it like,
It's almost like a feel of like an awards show, like the Oscars or something.
And I also think that you could do videos whereby you're not giving anything away, but you could actually have technical directors up there talking about how do you prepare for a season where the rules don't change? What areas of the car, so you're going to see next week when we launch it in Bahrain what I'm talking about. But you know what I'm saying? In other words, if we're going to go inside F1, let's go full on. It was only, you're not going to watch something like that as a casual fan. This is for the hardcore.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have Mr. Varsha with us, the man who needs no introduction to American Formula One fans, from his home studio in the sprawling Varsha penthouse above downtown Atlanta, Mr. Bob Varsha.
Sprawling.
How are you, Bob?
Sprawling.
His wife often loses him.
I'm sprawling. Yeah, exactly. It becomes a lot more narrow when your family shows up and suddenly every inch of bed space is covered with people. And since they're young people, clothes everywhere. It's a bit of it's like General Sherman came back through town and,
wow,
kind of left us with what we got. But I know what you're talking about. And I did watch the introductions. I agree with a lot of what Jonathan is saying. I can only imagine how much they spent putting that show together. It was spectacular. I agree that there's no point in having the drivers or company people speak if they're not going to say anything. And I got to say the same about the supposed Formula One journalists. Lawrence Barretto knows so much about Formula One. What's he doing asking these cream puff questions?
Yeah.
The host, Jack Whitehall, I thought was very funny and very appropriately funny. It was almost like a roast.
Yes. Well, that's where I felt it was a bit like the Oscars or something.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people may not know that the teams were each given 7 minutes of time to do whatever they wanted to do, which is why you saw Christian Horner get up there to speak for Red Bull. We didn't hear from Max or Liam. I think more probing questioning, more discussion of real honest to goodness facts, more video of the cars in action. Show me last year's car in action. I mean, there's so much great Formula One video out there, moments on the track. And I think generally the spectacle could have been so much more than what it was. And it would have made a nice, tight 1 hour show. It didn't need to go on for 2 hours, I don't think.
But they could also show off things like, let's have a look at the Aston Martin new facility, for example. Let's have let's have Lance Stroll.
He's not the new Aston Martin wind tunnel.
Let's see things we don't normally see in Formula One. Cadillac have just set up store next to Hendricks. I'd love to see what they're planning to do there, even if it's just plans of it. Get people in touch. You need a news story. No news stories came out of it. In fact, I would say that the only news stories were negative, and frankly,
the only way I'll argue is that I will reiterate something both you and Bob said, is that I wrote in my notes that I really like Jack Whitehall. I don't know him at all. And I thought he did a fantastic job. But that's what came out of it. There was a bunch of that shared around. Yeah. Like him, like you said, roasting Lewis Hamilton. When he called Lewis Hamilton, he said he was peacocking around like a Fortnite character. Well, I didn't realize that Lewis Hamilton is a Fortnite skin or character that you can have in that game.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's actually in that game. So, but anyway, he pushed the limits just enough.
Yeah, I thought there was some great lines like, those great rivals like Senna, Prost, Hill, Schumacher, and Alonso against time.
He was really good.
What's the point of bringing in musical performers to lip sync?
I know,
which is what Kane Brown was doing, which is what Machine Gun Kelly was doing, and whoever that girl was, whatever she was doing.
And the same is true of the
up there.
Yeah, the same is true of the guy that was the synth guy. Your favorite, the guy with the turntables.
Oh, the DJs.
Well, and here's the thing:
save us from DJs.
Yeah, but Bob, did you know he actually wrote the theme song for Formula One?
So well, that's
but
great.
Nobody told us.
Come out and play the theme song.
Exactly. But the one thing that I did
with buttons and
before you stop me, but you were right to stop me. But what I was going to say is the biggest story that came out of it for me was Red Bull really did get roasted.
Yeah,
Max, we could have put you next to George. Obviously, Horner was booed, and also
so was Max.
So was Max, and so he was also called a +1, which was pretty funny. But also, Red Bull were the only ones to refuse to talk on the stage, if you saw, which I thought was a letdown for Liam Lawson, because we all want to know more about him.
Yeah, exactly.
And his personality.
Let him introduce himself.
Yeah.
I like your idea of a panel discussion. So get neutral characters out there. You want to talk about design trends? Get Gary Anderson out there, or Frank Durney, or Sir Patrick Head, or someone like that who is vastly experienced in Formula One technology and design techniques, and let them talk about what they expect to see or what they know is already happening.
You know who would have hosting it? I'd have Donnie Wahlback, Usain Bolt, and Gordon Ramsay, all of which I've interviewed on the grid at Vegas.
Donnie Wahlberg, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You said Wahlback. I was like,
Wahlback. Donnie Wahlberg.
I don't know who that was.
But they are genuine F1 fans. Gordon Ramsay was there, and Ramsay could hold that easily and actually come up with some probably interesting stuff.
Yeah. So going back to the booing that went on, apparently this became a giant thing, right? The booing. And I want to get y'all's take, and then I personally, I'll say mine first, because I don't care if people are booing. It's real. It's what they're feeling at the moment. It's not contrived at all. Cheers, boos. Yeah. What's the difference? And I don't know. Do y'all agree or disagree?
I agree totally. Look, there was 22,000 fans there, most of which were from Britain, but I'm sure some people came from all over the place. Bottom line is, you tell me when exactly. Yeah. You tell me when's the last time you were in front of Christian Horner on your own as a fan. No, you sit out at Woodcote, or you sit out in the camping fields, and you never get to see the guy in person. You see him on Sky, you hear him ask questions, and you see him celebrate on TV or the big screens. So, hey, like you say, this is the real deal. And I mean, Travis Kelce, if Travis Kelce walks out on, at the New Orleans Stadium or something, I'm sure he'd get booed. And I mean, I'm sure the Canadian hockey team the same.
Yeah.
Right. Look at the Four Nations hockey tournament. U.S. played Canada, 2 spectacular games, and the U.S. got booed in Canada.
Quite right.
And actually in Boston, where the final was played. That's part of it. If you're a fan, you've got an opinion.
Yeah.
You have people you like, people you don't like.
And
there's nothing wrong with that.
And showing your support is exactly what fans do. If we'd have been in Holland, which, by the way, that's another idea. I'd like to see it not be in England every time. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, why not?
Even though Formula One's based in England, I'd like to see, have a Dutch feel to it, let's say, or let's have an Italian feel to it. And like you say, you get some video of Maranello, or you get a story of one of the greats like Ascari or something, and you make that a theme, and you go back and look at the great early Ferrari drivers, for example. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and did you see that Jos Verstappen came out and was saying that he was just completely upset about people booing? I'm like, dude, you need to get
with the program.
little thin skin there, and was saying that
grow up.
Well, yeah, exactly. I did like it when Jake Whitehall, the host, and said, and now Max, the man who wants to be here. I can't remember the way he phrased it. And they
He's
pan
so
over
happy to be here.
So happy to be here. And they pan over to Max, and he's got this
You're sitting there glumly.
We had strange smile, like, like, anyway, it was, that was one of my favorite parts of the whole event, because like you said about the music and stuff, I didn't really, maybe I'm just not the demographic, but the lip syncing didn't help either. But, I would call it a good first
a good starting
point.
point.
I think you said that.
And like you say, one to be reviewed. And I'm sure I'm not the only one coming up with ideas like that they can look at themselves.
Formula One is big on fan polls. Ask the fans, what do you want to see before preseason testing? You want to see the cars, you want to see the drivers, you want a good time, and you want entertainment. I mean, you want somebody to get up there and however you arrive at that.
You know what would be really cool? Have a lottery with your ticket when you come in. If you win, 20 lucky people will get a chance to ask a question.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
To each driver.
Pass the microphone.
Pass the microphone, and the drum roll goes, spotlight, and it's Audrey from Newport Pagnell.
You've hosted an event like that, and I watched it when we did the one here in Austin back in the day when we had a handful of the younger
threw out
drivers.
Merchandise. Yeah, great.
Throwing out T-shirts. Maybe that's a little much on the.
But that was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great.
Like,
but
Perez got asked to get married, didn't she?
Yeah, getting the feedback from the crowd was great. Questions or whatever. So I always thought that was good. All right, well, let's get our first break in real quick, and we'll be back right after these messages. All right, checking YouTube. Kevin Kelly's here. David Lawrence. Good evening, folks, he says. Let's see. Kevin Kelly said, so boring. I guess he didn't. I guess overall I have to agree with that, Kevin. So Chris Foster's on. He says, WEX Championship starts next week. Awesome. Yep.
Yes, it does. They had the prologue this weekend.
Yep, and they're coming here to Austin.
Hell yeah, in September.
Yep, we'll be a part of that. Glad you joined us, Chris. Let's see what else. David Lawrence, I need Max ASAP, LOL. Let's see what else. David Lawrence, F175, I didn't like that each team was given creative freedom. He says, I did like that each team was given creative freedom to do their presentation as they choose.
Yeah,
why not?
That was true.
Kevin Kelly says, Jonathan Green, happy birthday. Belated.
Hey.
Thanks, buddy.
David says, I agree with
Indeed.
Bob and Greeny. It felt like the Oscars since Jack, the host, but he did not hold back on the jokes. Good. I'm glad. Because I really thought that was the best part of the whole thing, honestly. Just this guy's funny jokes.
The intro.
All right, we're coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to your Sunday night with Speed City. One of the things that happened at the F175 event that we were talking about, the booze. Well, the FIA came out and labeled this, the crowd's behavior as tribalist in a statement. And this is which I think is kind of ridiculous, but not kind of ridiculous, is ridiculous. But it's a nice segue for me to lead into the fact that Mohammed Ben Sulayem was talking about something. And most of the time, I find myself either cringing or not liking what he says. But this time, I actually did like what he said, because he said F1 should consider return to V10 engines on e-fuels. And when we were talking about the 2026 potential engines and rule changes a year or so ago, it's one of the things that I said. I was like, I'd love to see higher RPM multi-cylinder engines back running on e-fuels. Why not? Now, I know that this is not a huge story or anything, but the fact that I was agreeing with Mohammed Ben Sulayem was a first for me.
Well,
yeah, Bob.
I'll quibble a bit. I think what he said was F1 should consider such a thing, because he thought it was demonstrating leadership in the area of e-fuels and sustainable quality sights and sounds of racing and that sort of thing. But I would also say, and elsewhere in our show doc, I put the story of Mark Rushbrook, the performance boss at Ford Motor Company, talking about how Ford and Red Bull got together. Red Bull was not among their initial cut of potential operations, because Ford actually thought about buying a team, then decided against it. But one of the things that Rushbrook said was, we wanted to get involved in Formula One again, after saying for years that we wouldn't, because of the use of electric technology for propulsion. He said, hybrid engines, we're in. That's what we want. We want to demonstrate, capability in terms of electric propulsion. So, you want to go back to 10-cylinder screamers, that's just fine, but be careful what you wish for, because the Fords and GMs and other folks might pull out. Look at Honda. They wanted to get together with Nissan to discuss electronic propulsion or electric propulsion. And then, the deal fell apart. And Honda is back in Formula One because of that very reason. We want electric propulsion in cars. We want to advance the technology.
I think that's exactly what got us where we are, which personally, I wrote in my notes that the V6 hybrid engine is not special or exciting in any way, and they sound boring, which I know that's not news to anybody watching the show, listening to the show. But I think the electric car boom of 23, where every manufacturer was like, how many were saying they're not even going to build any cars that, they're going to stop development of any internal combustion. And then they realized, I think the bottom line is they realized that the infrastructure can't keep up with the pace that the manufacturers are changing. And then the demand dropped off. You can pick up electric cars now for, well below sticker price, where before they were well above. So, but I think that F1 may have got caught up in this a little bit in the world where we are now, is this tiny little 1.6 liter V6 hybrid engine. Because look, let's face it, there's plenty of big multi-cylinder aspirational hybrids is what I call them in my, I was just thinking through this. You've got, the Ferrari SF90, you got the Lamborghini Revelto, you've got the Ferrari 296, the McLaren Artura, and the Corvette E-Ray, all multi-cylinder, very exciting, all hybrid though, because
don't forget the Prius.
Yes, and the Prius is also hybrid. That's the only thing it has in common with all of this, although the new Prius actually looks a little better than the old one. But my point in all of that is I think F1 got caught up in it, just like all the car manufacturers saying, hey, let's be as road relevant as possible. But all those cars that I just talked about are very road relevant. And you know what? I don't want my F1 car to be ultra road relevant. Like, I don't want it to be like a Camry hybrid V6. I want it to be like a Lamborghini, a McLaren, or a Corvette, or one of those hybrids. Car. Exactly. I don't want it to be that road relevant. I think and I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Right. Go ahead, Bob.
And Rushbrook actually said something about that in the story I read. He said, we want to, to get our technology into the race car. And if we get something back from the race car, that's great, but that's not the primary purpose. And I think that's an important note. They want to go racing with this cutting edge technology. Hey, you want the cars to be noisy? That's easy. Take the turbos off. Get your electrical energy somewhere else, like the old, the ERG systems, the energy recovery, ERS, I should say. Find another way to recharge the battery during the race and let those cylinders sing. I mean, that's not that big a technological jump.
Yeah, and here's a couple of stories for you.
To make them quiet.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of stories that are worth looking up if you're interested on this subject. I've just come back from the Toyota series. We run what's called carbon neutral. And basically what it means is that the process that we use and the synthetic fuel that we use is actually taking, in other words, I think the carbon output was like 12% of what normal fuel would be. And so it's basically, we call it a non-carbon fuel.
Yeah.
And also, if you want another good story, WEC, if you remember this story, ran their fuel. I don't know if this is for the whole championship, but they get it from the wastage from wine in France.
I do remember that. That's right. And
there's no, and by the way, in our engines, in the Corolla engine.
Perfect. I see Bob. Yeah.
It's fantastic. What a great story.
Yeah.
Go motor racing and use the wastage of Burgundy. Ron Burgundy.
Salute.
Ron Burgundy. But you know what? A lot of these fuels, they're saying they're pulling the carbon that's from the air, putting it in their fuels, and then it's putting it back in the air, as the term carbon neutral comes from, right?
Yep.
So, but my circling back to what MBS said about multi-cylinder engine. Yeah, why not? And Bob, what you said about turbos, spot on. As a complete, probably the most gearhead of us all, is that I know exactly what you're talking about. I have one turbo car, one not, and the one that's not sounds twice as good, even though it's nowhere near as fast. But that's a great idea.
Well,
and you don't have to have the MGUHs and all of that to charge the battery. You can charge the battery the old-fashioned way.
Right.
You can charge it with the engine. And it may not be as hyper efficient because, Formula One does love to brag about their engines are the most efficient in internal combustion engine ever to hit the planet. But, maybe, maybe do they have to lead the path that way, or they do it with e-fuels, right? And then it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've always expressed my admiration for engineers. And if you, redefine Formula One as a sustainable, non-carbon fuel, but you want the things to be powerful and noisy, engineers will find a way to do it.
Yeah.
That's just what they do.
Absolutely. I always say that engineers can save the world. Jonathan, speaking of the FIA and all of the crew over there, you put a little story in here about the swearing ban.
Yeah, this is going to roll on, and I hate to say it because it's boring as bat.
It's the same as booing in my mind.
I agree, and
exactly.
As you saw, of all people, Gordon Ramsay was asked about it, and of course, then followed up with swearing. But it's totally ridiculous, to be honest, to take young men and women whose vernacular is that, and whose working vernacular is that, and pretend it doesn't exist. It's like, American football, can you imagine something? No swearing in American football. Come on.
Yes. It's just ridiculous.
You're banging heads with each other.
Microphones on the players. Next thing you know, they're going to be dictating what kind of music you can play in the garages on race weekends. What kind of food you can serve your guests or your team.
We were lucky. Yeah, we were lucky it didn't blow up with the Black Lives Matter stuff, because if you remember, Hamilton started taking a stand, free Breonna Taylor, all this sort of stuff, which is his wont to do. Now, whether it should be allowed on international television and he should have that pulpit is a different subject. If he wants to do it when he's running around New York in his fashion show, that's his won't. Or if he wants to put it on Instagram. But while he's working in Formula One, perhaps for Mercedes, you can understand the corporateness of them saying, well, that's not our stance. And you're taking you're making it sound like it's an opinion of Formula One, which it isn't.
Yeah. Which it isn't. And there's lots of ways to get around it. Again, it's like the fuel question and the noise question in Formula One. If you don't want to hear drivers swear in the press conference, put a 5-second delay and bleep them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Then it won't go out over the
And in
broadcast
fact,
channels.
that is just as effective.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Honestly, if you get on a radio, if you see a radio out, and by the way, they can certainly do that on the fly in Formula One because it's delayed anyway. So the fact that Alonso says, "Oh, bleep, 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 you bleeper," you know,
we get the idea.
Yeah, exactly. You don't
He's
think.
angry.
In fact, it's better because you're like, "Oh, he went off." You know,
Yeah,
you want the raw
imagination
emotion.
can go wild.
Yeah.
It is just ridiculous, honestly.
Well,
it's just ridiculous.
it's school children like.
Yeah, it's really an archaic way to think about this. All right, well, speaking of that, it's a nice segue because we're going to talk a little bit about Lewis Hamilton
Yes.
and his amazing journey to Ferrari back after these messages. All right, back on YouTube.
And by the way,
Yeah.
that use of the word tribalist by Ben Sulayem,
Yep.
that's racist. I think.
Yes, it is. You
Look
could
up
argue
the
that.
verb tribalist. Yeah, it's siding with your tribe. Oh yeah, who has tribes?
Yeah.
Africa.
Yes, but
and
Are you guys determined to get us banned
America?
from YouTube?
no. And by
slightly?
the way, you talk about tribalism. Well, he's from a part of the world, the Middle East, where tribes, like the Bedouin tribe, is
Right,
seen
right.
as, like you say, as a lesser
Oh,
tribal. You know,
Right.
when you are tribalist, it means that you are basic. You are. It's got lots of ramifications that are not right in this instance.
yeah.
yeah,
It's not the first time
Just
he's
leave it
been
alone.
incorrect. Yeah, leave it alone. Go away.
What are the boys saying on YouTube here, real quick? Kevin Kelly, Mr. FIA was begging for love, making the F10 comment. He knows. Yeah, maybe so, KK.
What was he
All
saying?
right, coming back. He said NBS.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. Sorry, I was just laughing at some of the comments on YouTube.
What are they saying?
David Lawrence says F1 doesn't have the technology anymore to bleep swearing. It's just ridiculous. Casey's got the bleep button ready.
There you go.
He actually has the dump button ready for us if that happens. All right, we're going to talk about Lewis Hamilton because in case you didn't hear about it, he switched teams. Yay, Lewis Hamilton's gone to Ferrari. And Jonathan, why don't you cue up this little 2-minute clip that you got? Because there's a little story behind it where we got the clip and all that.
Yeah, I thought we'd, in the spirit of one of our partners, which is Greenlight Television, who I've been working for the last few years. They have a weekly show called Motorsport Mondial, and they also have a weekly show called Auto Mondial. And we're going to try and get some samples where it's relevant to this show and just put them out there. And yes, they put out a story just last week about Hamilton's first drive at Ferrari. And while we've talked about it enough, we haven't really seen much. If you haven't been trawling the net, take a look at this. This is the day that he actually stepped out and got in the car for the first time.
It's a day that the motorsport world has been anticipating for almost 12 months. A day that is the result of a groundbreaking signing. One that became the biggest news story in Formula One for more than a decade. That day is Lewis Hamilton's first day at Ferrari, as the Briton spent 3 days touring Maranello and blowing the cobwebs off on the Fiorano test track. The day came almost a year to date after the Brit announced he was leaving Mercedes a year earlier than his initial 2-year contract until 2026, allowing him to move to Ferrari for this season. It marks Hamilton's third team move in the sport, but for the first time without a Mercedes powertrain, as McLaren also used a Mercedes engine when he drove for them between 2007 and 2012. However, having seen success with both teams, maybe Ferrari will be the same and help the prancing horse to return to the top step for the first time since 2008. The 7-time champion was first given a tour of the factory, meeting all of his new colleagues and seeing the facilities for the first time, before posing for photographs in front of Enzo Ferrari's house with an F40, a photo that would garner immediate internet attention. Then, 2 days later, Hamilton was allowed on track at Fiorano. But because Formula One rules dictate that current drivers can only complete a maximum of 1,000 kilometres in what is known as testing of previous cars, the 2023 Ferrari SF23 was used for Hamilton's initial run of around 100 kilometres. And in far from ideal conditions, the number 44 would not be looking for lap records. This first run was to get a feel for its handling, its brakes, and perhaps most of all, its power unit. Equally, after over a decade at Mercedes, many systems such as controls, start procedures, DRS and ERS will all be different at Ferrari, and so the day was all very much back to school for the 7-time champion. Under the watchful eye of thousands of Tifosi fans, 30 laps were completed without a hitch in a run that Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur described as a warm-up. The day also allowed Hamilton to communicate with his new race engineer, Riccardo Adami, for the first time, not to count the other thousands of employees that work for the Scuderia. Alongside Hamilton, Charles Leclerc also got to blow the cobwebs off, although his time on track was rather overshadowed by his new teammates' time in the limelight. The test at Fiorano was followed by a further 2 days of private track time at Barcelona, with Hamilton crashing his Ferrari late on day 2, perhaps evidence that the Briton was already nearing the edge. After this, aside from a tyre test, he'll have to wait until Ferrari's official launch in mid-February to shake down the 2025 car, the SF25, before flying to Bahrain for the pre-season test. Fans and rival teams alike will be eagerly anticipating the first public test to see just how the 7-time champion stacks up, and we'll be following the Formula One pre-season right here on Motorsport Mundial.
Take them
Yeah,
back.
well, here we go, guys.
Misleading.
We were just arguing about something they said in that video about 2008 when they said Ferrari last was on the top step.
Yeah, Lewis. Yeah.
And you were both right. Jonathan said they were, and that was constructors, and Bob said no, it was
Right.
2007 with Kimi Räikkönen. But...
Yeah, well, 2007 was the last time an individual was the drivers' champion for Ferrari. 2008 was the constructors' championship, but it takes 2 drivers to compete.
And by the way, Kevin Kelly corrected me
Unless
and
you're
all of us. It's Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Sir Lewis Hamilton. Hell, yes.
Well,
I forgot his chain armor.
That's a great.
Brilliant.
That's a great point. When was the last time you heard Lewis referred to as Sir Lewis Hamilton? They didn't do it in that 2-hour.
Very true.
Formula One
good
livery
point.
debut.
And whenever Sterling Moss was introduced, he was always introduced as Sir Sterling Moss.
Yeah.
Sir Sterling Moss, Sir Jackie Stewart was there.
Yep.
I mean,
So Jack Brown.
come on.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but it's pretty
he's
exciting to see cars on track, especially the fact that Lewis Hamilton's in a red car. It's amazing.
Well, there's no question that is the big story.
Yeah, that they claimed in that video it was the biggest story in a decade. And I don't know. At first I was saying,
It's the biggest move in a decade.
biggest move for sure. Maybe that's what they said. Maybe I need to go back and listen to it.
No.
But anyway, it's a huge story, and I love it. And I said it last year. What is my favorite story for this year, going into this year? So I think it couldn't be a bigger driver story. And honestly, I couldn't be happier if Lewis Hamilton were to add a championship. I'm really not a fan of any
it'd be
particular
fantastic.
driver. I think it would just be an amazing story, right?
Yeah.
Switching teams and going to Ferrari and
Yeah,
winning it
and
all.
by the way, that has been the hurdle, if you will, of those sort of legends like Nigel Mansell, who won his first race for Ferrari but didn't win the title for them, and Sebastian Vettel, who also came with Fernando Alonso, none of which were world champions in a Ferrari. So in that respect, Kimi, as Bob pointed out, was the last one. But he was a Ferrari. He wasn't a legend, 3-time world champion coming to save Ferrari. He was joining them at the right time, and he won them a title.
Yeah.
And the McLaren drivers, Sir Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, loathed each other and took points off each other
That's right.
all year long. enabling Kimi Räikkönen to take that championship.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's actually a good story. It's a nice segue to say that's been a story mooted this week about Piastri and Norris, which is I think Stella said that they are 0 at the moment, which means they are equal. And it is both Piastri and Norris have both said that they want to win the world title, quite rightly.
And they better say that.
Yeah, you better say that. And there's nothing stopping them. Piastri more than capable, as we saw last year. It will be interesting to see how they fight each other, because certainly the first 6 races, Stella can't say, hey, man, you got to,
Right.
there was a bit of team orders last year, but for the right reason.
Yeah. Papaya rules, etc. Yeah, that's going to be absolutely one of the best stories to watch. But before we go any further, I want to get into the liveries.
Okay.
Because
Can I footnote that story again, though? I think I wrote it down. Riccardo Amasi, that's how I had. That's going to be a key guy. What I'm going to do some research on him, which is, he was mentioned in that story, which is Hamilton's engineer. And that is crucial.
Yes, I caught that. I was listening to that thinking, that is such a...
Get in there,
Yeah, such
Lewis.
a crucial relationship in Formula One. Maybe the most important
I go for
relationship
it, Luis.
in Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously he's had a decade relationship with Pete Boddington, and it's been very successful, but it won't continue. So the guy whose job it is to engineer Hamilton is huge.
All right, so on to the liveries. We got to see the liveries in F175. We talked all about the silly stuff in F175 event, but we didn't talk about the liveries yet. And I don't know about you guys, but I'll ask you, Greeny, first. I had the best, if I were to rank them, the ranking for me was very, very easy. I quickly honed in on one of them. What about you?
I've got a couple of favorites. Do you want to hear them?
Sure.
Aston Martin. I think it looks
that's
very
a good
clean,
one.
very nice.
Yep.
I actually liked RB.
That was mine.
Okay.
That was mine. And I don't know if I just really liked it or the fact that it was the most different.
I think both. I think, you're always looking for something new and different. I didn't particularly like the silver blue last year, particularly.
Yeah.
It's a complicated name, and that's another thing that got trashed in the S75 the launch by is that they had a whole video wandering around England talking about, there's one thing to lambast the team, but Red Bull didn't come out full of glory, did they? They were lambasted and booed for real. Then they did a 3-minute video of wandering around England going, how do you say it again?
Yeah.
So,
Bob, what about you? What about the liveries?
Well, I'll start out by saying I'm not crazy about white race cars.
yeah.
So I'm not in agreement with folks who think that the RB was such a big deal. Kind of same with the Ferrari, that big white wave
the
over
HP.
the engine cover.
The HP bothers me
Nah.
on the Ferrari car. Other than that, I like it. And that's nothing in the
It's too big?
HP. Yeah, it's just too big.
Yeah. I reckon
do
that'll
like-
shrink.
Yeah, I like the Aston.
Mm.
I didn't notice that the Alpine had changed at all, or the Williams for that matter. So I'll go with the McLaren. Remember last year when everybody was worried about getting down to the minimum weight, and they were trying to take paint off the cars just to save every gram they possibly could. I didn't notice a lot of open, exposed carbon fiber on these cars, but then again, you couldn't see them all that well. So, I'll be interested to see who shows up fully enveloped in paint or decal or whatever it is. But I think my favorite is probably yours, Jonathan. The Aston Martin team, I thought looked good.
Did you know a little footnote that the rules have changed for the overall weight this year? They've gone up 2 kilos.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that now the minimum weight for the driver is 82, and that means that someone like George Russell's fine, but Yuki would have to add
A
weight.
cheeseburger?
No, he would have to add weight to the car. He's under 82 at least.
By the way, I'll go
he's
back
probably
to
about
the
62.
liveries. The liveries, my second favorite, and maybe my first, I'm still vacillating, is the Haas car. Did you look at that?
Quite like the
I
Aston
really
car.
like that car.
Yeah.
I think maybe, again, it's quite different, again. But
No, that's
anyway,
a good car.
what were you going to say about the weights,
Yeah,
Bob?
dealing with that. Well, they're thinking about mandating cooling on the cars for extremely hot weekends, like we saw in Qatar last year, where drivers were fainting,
Yes.
sitting
I thought
down,
they did.
having to be washed down. No, they haven't been mandated. They are optional if your driver
suits.
wants to use
Yeah.
one. Yes.
But what was
if
the
you're
headline
not
only
running,
this
'cause
year? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, just for this year, they're optional. Next year, they will be mandatory.
Oh, okay.
But
that's right.
They include a box, an air conditioning box, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
And that's going to add weight to the car. So if you don't run a cooling system on the car, you have to add weight. And I think that's part of the reason they upped the minimum weights of the cars, was to accommodate the cooling systems.
There you go.
Yeah, that's an American company that I can't remember who it is now. I'm trying to
Is
look
that
it
right?
up. Yeah, it's an American company, and
DeWalt.
no, it's all they do. I think that's all they do, because
Frigidaire,
No, not Frigidaire. No, you're dating yourself there.
Amana,
Dang it, I'm trying to
Viking,
find it right
GE.
now. But it's I recognize them because they are the sponsor to the new Go to Garages lounge, and I recognize the name.
Okay.
And anyway, it's just and I can't find it immediately. Of course, maybe somebody in YouTube is screaming at me with it. No, they haven't. But anyway, it's an American company. I'm just glad to see that too. I thought that
Cool.
was cool. Yeah.
excellent.
What else on the liveries? Anybody else? Any other livery that jumps out at you guys, or positive or negative for that matter?
No, not really. I mean, steak was bold, but then again, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, steak to me was I thought it was interesting last year. In fact, I think I chose it as one of my favorites last year. But again, it didn't appear that different to me this year. So I'm just scrolling through the rest of them. I mean, Aston Martin's way up there for sure.
It just looks clean, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It looks very nice, and
Yeah.
it's uniform in its.
I'm on Chris Medlin's article on Racer, just looking because all the photos are there, and I'm just looking through them.
Is Haas's that different this year?
Yeah, it's quite
bit.
different actually. Yeah,
Is it?
yeah. Take a look at it.
I'll have to look again.
Yep.
Mhm.
Take a look. I'll text you the link so you can take a look at it. I just hit it in the show chat there. All right, what's our next story
Well,
here,
that was
Greeny?
quick.
I want to talk about Scoular.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Well,
We got a clip.
two stories. Let's Scoular and Lindblad. So let's
Yep.
start with Lindblad. We spoke about him, and we, as usual, are ahead of the game. And we'll also learn how we're also ahead of the game in something else in a moment.
Yes. Sorry, I was making sure we had that Scoular clip. Go-
Yeah. So anyway, Lindblad won the Toyota Racing Championship, the Toyota Racing
Ran away
Series.
with it,
Ran
actually.
away with it, yes. And we said, oh, he's a shoo-in. He's got 40 points. He's going to be in F1 fairly soon. Well, he was in F1 this week. He actually tested the RB with Yuki Tsunoda and Isaac Hadjar and did several hundred kilometers. So he is in an actual modern, not custom car or show car, which he's done a little bit with Coulthard. This was a real test to see how he stacked up against the regular drivers. So I don't think there's been any details on
And that
lap
was
times.
That was a 23 car, or was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a viable car, as
Yeah.
it were. But yeah, so pretty impressive. But the other story was Zack Scoular, who was runner-up to him, the young Kiwi, basically announced his series, and it has an American connection because the young Kiwi who lives in the United Arab Emirates is going to race in Europe. He's just gone over to Europe to race the Winter Series there. And I'll let him tell you why there is an American connection, and that connection is an IndyCar champion. Okay, Speed City fans, I'm delighted. Back from New Zealand, and he's back to his home of the United Arab Emirates. But we spent a good 5-6 weeks together. His name is Zack Scoular, and he was our runner-up and top rookie in the Toyota Formula Regional Oceania Series. Zack, welcome back to Speed City, and thanks for joining us with big news.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's get to the first of all, let's get to the big news. We were hounding you throughout the 5 weeks to tell us where you were going, and I guess the paper wasn't dry yet, so you wanted to hold back quite rightly. But tell us what your plans are for the season ahead.
Yeah, well, just announced the other day was that I'll be racing in Eurocup 3. So it's a Spanish-based championship which races all across Europe. It's the same chassis that we used in the CT Frog Championship, that's just a slightly updated aero kit. And so I'll be racing in that series alongside Paolo Motorsport, and hopefully we can continue the momentum which we started with.
So Palou Motorsport, obviously that's Alex Palou, the IndyCar champion extraordinaire. That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, the team, it's obviously quite a new team. Only established when the Euro Cup 3 championship became a thing, which was 2 or 3 years ago. But, we've been looking at teams throughout the year, like in Euro Cup 3, and they've had some very strong development, and they're putting a lot into it this season. And, that goal is to win. So hopefully we can do that with them.
And how different will the car be to what you were driving for the 5 weeks?
Well, I've done 2 days in the car. I did 2 days in December, and the car, it is different. There's a lot more aero, so you're cornering quite a bit quicker. So there will be a bit of adapting to do in the driving I've got coming up. But yeah, it's just adapting as quick as I can.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I tell you what, a footnote to that, and another reason for having that story is that it's nice to follow Zack where he's going. But with Palou, there's a definite interest there in the fact that he can now very cleverly keep his eye in both the States and in Europe, because if it doesn't all work out for him in Europe, if he still runs with Alex Palou Racing, obviously there's a chance of Indy Next or whatever it might be. It keeps him in touch with that. And interestingly enough, funnily enough, this weekend, Palou Motorsport won their first race, and guess who won it? It wasn't Zack Scoular. It was James Agozi, a new name for you, a Red Bull Junior from the US of A. 17 years of age. So
whereabouts in America?
He's from Florida.
I was going to say another Floridian.
Another Floridian. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. And on his way, I have to be hand on heart. I did not know a lot about him. He's been racing in Europe. He's got a lot of karting exploits. He's been picked up by Red Bull. And he too is racing for Palou Racing. And so look him up, James Agozi. Ogozi. I'll try and get him on the show.
I'll have to admit, I don't think I'd heard the name at all. If I had, I'd forgotten it because I hadn't heard of it.
Well, the fact that he's a Red Bull Junior really does, and the fact that you've seen Lindblad go from, zero to hero in a matter of weeks in front of us is that we should keep an eye on who's doing what.
This could be another example of Red Bull being 1 or 2 steps ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talking of being ahead of the game.
Which one?
Timing. It's the key to comedy.
Yes. So, what are you talking about? Oh, the time. Oh, that one.
Yes.
You're so excited about this. I'd forgotten about it.
Bob's going to be excited.
I don't know if I sent it to Casey. Hold on. There's a really cool video that Jonathan sent me, and I don't know if I put it in.
Oh, you've let
show
me
doc. But
down.
Where is it? I don't see it. The Tag Heuer. Casey, do we have the Tag Heuer? Okay. I don't see it, Greeny.
I didn't put it anywhere.
Did you email it to me?
Yes.
Or did you text it to me? Because
Text it to you.
So I don't have it. That's why I don't have it, because you texted to me. But we'll get it here in just a second. Because you didn't email it to me. Hey, talk about Logan Sargeant, and I'll get this to Casey.
Yeah,
I'm
is
sad
interesting.
about this.
I'm very sad about this. Bob, I don't know if you know about this. Logan Sargeant has quit motor racing full stoppage. And
I saw that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? I feel for him because, we all know how cutthroat and tough Formula One can be, but it seems to me, not a waste, that's the wrong word, but it seems to me that he's obviously been very perturbed, if that's the right word, by his circumstances, and has given up the ghost. I mean, it's a lot of time and energy to throw out, and major sponsors like Michelob behind him.
Yeah, and money.
You gotta feel for him.
I don't know all the details. I don't know if it's because he's just lost the fire, or because, he's frustrated by not achieving the goal that he originally set out to do. I mean, missing the premier form of motorsport in the world, or leaving it in a certain level of disgrace, is a factor of it all. Maybe just for his mental health.
Yeah, that's what I think.
It would be a good idea if he steps aside for a while. He can always come back, but if he's feeling that this is not something he wants to continue with, then, I totally understand. I hope he's 100% confident in his decision. and good luck to him.
Yeah, I can see him coming back and doing IMSA or WEC or whatever, and certainly,
Sure.
any
Or
team.
Indy.
Or Indy, yeah. Any team worth their salt would. I mean, if, like you say, if there was an IndyCar driver getting injured, you could slot him straight in, like K-Mag style, and bring him in. Or if Formula One, I mean, think about he would be a fantastic test driver, for example, for Cadillac.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I just was sad to see it happen.
Yeah.
I was like, I hope that, because he had a pretty rough go of all of that. His car taken away,
Sure.
and I mean that was ugly.
And the
it was
whole thing, if you remember
Not
how
a
it
great
was,
car to begin with.
no, it was a terrible car, and then to be thrown out the ignominious, sort of, I get to Australia, we've only got one car, well, you're not good enough. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Maybe we can get him in the booth in Miami. How about that?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know
Yeah,
if he's still stinging and doesn't want to be anywhere near the sport, but
Well, take him to dinner and see what he has to say for himself.
Greeny, I cannot get that over to
Why?
Casey because it's not sharing properly. I don't know why. I've shared it 3 times with Casey and it doesn't work. So
Get our chief technical officer.
it's
the
on
job.
Instagram. It's on Instagram, and that's why. And I've shared it via email to you twice, Casey, and it's not getting there. But maybe next time we'll figure out a better way to do that. But anyway,
Put a link on our website or something.
Yeah, next week.
yep. What else we got? What other stories, real quick? Because we just got about 4 minutes left in show.
Shout it. I'm ready.
You said why Ford settled it. Well, Bob
Yeah, it's a
kinda-
funny story.
Yeah.
It basically, and Bob actually just mentioned this earlier in the show,
Mm-hmm.
and you can comment on this, I'm sure. But Ford were actually actively looking to buy a Formula One team and had been approached by a couple of other teams before they made this deal with Red Bull. I saw it as a headline as Ford wanting to get it, a headline which was a misrepresentation, really. But basically, it said the headline was Ford seeking F1 team, but that was then. It's not now because they've got a deal with Red Bull, so they're not doing it anymore. But before they did the deal with Red Bull, and that did make for a very interesting concept. That it may be the only way I would read it as a good story is if Ford saw this relationship with Red Bull and then decided that they wanted to buy a team, which they could inevitably do. You've got the powerhouses then of Mercedes, Audi, Ferrari, and so on and so forth. So that part of it I found interesting.
All right.
Yeah, well, and they went into the fact that the company policy is not to buy a team. They don't want to own a team because they don't. All of their motorsports involvement is with partners.
Yeah.
Drag racing,
They've never
stock
done
car
that, yeah.
racing, sports car racing. Yeah, they've always had a partner team,
Even in rally, yeah.
Penske, someone like that.
Yep, even in rally.
Even a rally with M Sport.
Yep.
They, we'll provide everything we can. We're going to be right in the thick of it, but we don't want to own the operation.
I don't know about you guys, but I love watches. And this sounds like the beginning of a live read for a commercial, but it's not. I love watches. A lot of car guys do, obviously, because it's so.
What?
And
Synonymous.
when Tag Heuer announced that they were doing the F1 watches, and here I am with an Apple Watch on now. But I was super excited. I went and looked at all their collection, and they've got some reasonably priced ones.
I am a Tag Heuer ambassador, as which you
Well,
now,
and I
will
know,
now
and you,
see.
and you went out to get an exclusive story with Tag Heuer. So let's
Yes.
hear from Jonathan Green. It's his live exclusive with Tag Heuer.
Well, the expression timing is everything couldn't be more appropriate for Formula One. It really is the essence of the sport. And the responsibility in Formula One for that timing is down to Tag Heuer. With me is Jean Campiche, who's in charge of that, who's been looking after that timing for many, many years now. First of all, Jean, tell us a little bit about how the system that you use works.
We have to install at board of each car one transponder. When a car passes the finish line, we receive the information of which car is it. We can guarantee with this system a precision of a 10,000 of a second. And these systems are made to don't give a possibility for an error.
That information is important to the driver, the teams, the media, and of course the worldwide. How quickly can you get all of that information back?
So only with a small restriction of 0.2 of a second, we have two systems working together, and we have to check that the two systems give exactly the same information.
Huh? See? I got in the go back in time machine
Casey,
to get the latest story.
Do a screenshot of that image of Johnny Green and see. Put it up because
I think I was working with Bob that year.
You're kidding.
Really?
Speed Vision, that was the shirt.
Yeah.
So
right.
I'm guessing that must have been
what year was that?
97, 6, 7, because that yellow
Could have been.
Yeah, the yellow Jordan there. You saw that?
That's funny.
97. Yeah, and Tag Heuer flew me over
90s.
to France to do that story.
Wow.
And afterwards, I became a
They
Tag
didn't fly
Heuer
me
ambassador.
over.
No, I know. Sorry about that, Bob.
All right, guys. Well, we are out of
man.
time. We are out of time. I'm glad we found it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to Jonathan Green, Bob Varsha, and everybody. We'll be back next Sunday night, same channel, same time. Talk to you then.
Happy trails.